What I'd like to do, this presentation has actually already been posted. I made some changes to adapt it to this morning. And I'm happy to go as slowly or as quickly through it as possible so that we can get to the end of it where we'll talk about some of the policy issues that I know are directly relevant to all of your work. Feel free to interrupt me. I really want to make sure that as I do this, you understand, to the extent you have questions, that I can try to address them. So let me get right to it. I call what we're doing developing a new paradigm. For those who know the work on Kuhn's work on the scientific revolution, you'll know that paradigm is used in a million different ways. And basically what I've been trying to do over the last 5 or so years is to come up with a new way of studying American Jews. Because the old way of doing surveys, such as the National Jewish Population Survey, were simply impossible to carry out. It was impossible to find the 2% of the American population using a random digit dial survey, randomly calling phone numbers. And the effort in 2001, which cost $6 million, $6 million seems to be a terrible number in Jewish life, $6 million, and attempted to find out of 1 million people who were phoned the Jews. Well, of course, when you try to call 1 million phone numbers and you don't have all that much money, you don't have unlimited money, you end up not getting a lot of people. And as a result, and in part because Jews are more difficult to reach by telephone than other people, because what?
They're on the internet.
No, it's not that they're on the internet. They're not at home. They're not at home at 6 o'clock. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're professors. They are people with higher income. They have telephones, we call it telephone ID. They can tell who's calling. They simply don't answer the phone in the same proportion that other people do. And so it wasn't a surprise that we only found Jews, or we mostly found Jews, who had large families, who were poor, etc. So we're trying to develop a new paradigm. And basically what we do, and I'm going to describe 2 sets of studies today. One set of the studies involves taking surveys that have been conducted by national organizations, mostly funded by the government, sometimes funded by large foundations, that ask the standard question about religion, in some cases identity as well, and do a fairly sophisticated synthesis of the actual data. And one of the things I'll say to you is that unlike other surveys which have been done, most of the Jewish population surveys, both on the local level, the national level, or to some degree have been done on a 10-year, decade basis, our goal is to build a database that every day we're adding information to so that we can, on an ongoing basis, identify both the size and the changing demographic characteristics of the population. So the basic goal is to, and the basic study that's at the heart of this is synthesizing from multiple national studies that include a standard question about religion, the size of the population. In synthesizing, we use fairly complicated Bayesian models. I'll describe those later. Multi-level models that take account of both the individuals in the survey and the design characteristics of the survey. The goal is to come up with reliable estimates of the size of the population, in this case by religion, that we can then use to weight, much like we use census data to weight, do post-stratification weighting of other surveys. And the second thing I'm going to describe today, after I describe the synthesis, is a survey that we have done of a Jewish population in America, weighted by the results, at least the preliminary results of the synthesis or the cross-survey analysis. Everybody with me so far? So the basic synthesis involves taking some of the most important national surveys. This probably don't mean a whole lot to you here in Yerushalayim, but the American National Elections Survey, the GSS, polls done by some of the leading news organizations, CBS, CNN, surveys done by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, the best surveys. And currently, we have 150 national surveys in the database that include over 450,000 individual respondents. Now you might ask, why don't you just take one of the best surveys like the GSS and use that to estimate the size of the population? Why? Why not?
It's too small.
It's too small, so it maybe has 1,500, 2,000 respondents. If Jews are approximately 10% of the population, approximately 2% of the population, we maybe have only 75 or 80 Jews in that sample, much too small. On the other hand, in combination with all of these, we can get a bigger picture. What we can also do is identify the characteristics of each study that lead to higher rates of identifying or lower rates of identifying Jews, and we can develop a trend line. Because many of these studies, the ANIS, the GSS, some of the Pew surveys, some of the Gallup surveys are done on a yearly basis, so we can actually detect trends over time. What we did was to identify virtually all surveys, national surveys, that had adequate methodological information that were conducted 1988 to 2008, and we're continuing to add surveys as they become available. In most cases, we were able to get the original data. In some cases, we had to go through special process in order to get the data, some restricted information in the data files, and particularly information about where subjects were located. And it's going to be important for later purposes. We then, and I won't go through the statistics of it, we pool the data across surveys, take account of sampling characteristics of each surveys, we do Bayesian analyses, multi-level Bayesian analyses of Monte Carlo simulations to try to get the best synthesis of all of the data. With an article last summer in Sociological Methods and Research for the statisticians here, if you want to look at how we do the modeling. So what do we find? Any questions? Everybody's with me?
Just please learn what is new, what has not been done regarding the methodology.
What has not been done?
What is new in what is not as
what hadn't been done before?
Well, the two pieces. One, we published early stages of this research using 25 and then 50 surveys. We now have 150 surveys over time. What we did, and we did it in this paper for sociological methods, we think we have a general method for for assessing, we're called a rare population.
Low incidence groups. Yeah.
Low incidence groups. In fact, it was interesting, when we first submitted the article for sociological methods and research, being Jews, writing about Jews, although Liz Ty, the lead author on this, is not Jewish, a lapsed Catholic, I was very sensitive that the article not be perceived as an article for a social science methods journal about the Jews.
There's all sorts of prejudice existing. So the way we did it is that we showed that we could predict the Muslim and the Mormon population in America using the same methods. And I think partly because the journal editor sent it to people who were knowledgeable about the Jewish community, we got back a very funny review which said something to the effect, well, it seems like these people know a whole lot more about the Jewish community than they do about the other communities. So why don't, because we're just interested in the methodology and the statistics, why don't you forget about the Mormons and the Muslims and just write about the Jews? You see in the article, we just write about the Jews.
Just one other question. The surveys are from various different dates.
Yes.
So the population estimates are for an average of these dates, or are they somehow synchronized with it?
Where they're synchronized with the dates. Because what we want to do in the end, we're now doing trend analyses where we're seeing the trend. So here is one simple summary of the data. And there are two lines here. SSRI is us, Leonard Social Research Institute. The red line is the National Jewish Population Surveys. So one of the things you see here is that based on, and this, just I want to be absolutely clear here, this is the adult U.S. population who identify as Jewish by religion. So the question asked on these surveys is
Self-identification.
Self-identification, right? No halakha, no application, no whatever. This is self-application. So this is the sociological definition of religion. The question is, what, if any, is your religion? Is it Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Jewish, Mormon, other, no religion? And what you see here is that our estimate of in 1990 is virtually identical to the 1990 NJPS's estimate of the number of Jews by religion. Virtually identical. What you see here is that in 2000, our estimate is considerably different and it's way outside the confidence intervals.
It's a 95% confidence interval?
These are 95% confidence intervals. Now, these are wider. It's actually more narrow than you think, because this is the actual point estimate for 2000, so it's a very limited number of the surveys right around 2000. The same goes for 2004 and 2008, but the trend line is pretty consistent. And again, what you see here is that NJPS 2000 found just over 3 million adult Jews. And one of the problems with NJPS is that that number was so discrepant, given that there was immigration during this period. There were at least 250,000 immigrants from the former Soviet Union, from other places in the world, that they had to do all sorts of, I'll call them unnatural acts, to come up with eventually a population estimate, including Jews not by religion, that was just slightly over 5 million. Now we believe, and now one other thing of note here is that the methodology of 2000 was completely different than the methodology of 1990. It's a source of some dispute. Both the sampling was different and the way in which the question was asked was different. As well, there was only an 18% response